So today, we're going to be talking about our legislative priorities. I wanted to talk a bit about the budget at the state legislature as we kind of dive in, because this year is a little different than years past. Not too much different than last year, but anyway, we'll talk about it. And then some of the bills that Mountain Mamas is going to be prioritizing. I will say that it's pretty early. Bills are still being drafted. Things are still, being thought up, and there's a lot of moving pieces. So these are going to be kind of the three big areas we'll be working in, but we have a legislative team. And if you're interested in that, we'll have more information at the end. But this team kind of digs into some of the legislation that's out there and decides if we want to add anything to our priority list. But we really look to things that are going to impact family budgets, air pollution, things that are impacting our kids, and that are going to have the biggest impact on reducing emissions to protect our future climate. And then we'll end with just a few updates on upcoming events and things like that. So I borrowed some slides from the Colorado Fiscal Institute presentation that Lauren and I saw earlier this year, because I think it does a good job of kind of talking about the federal budget reconciliation bill's impact on our budget in the state. And Lauren, again, feel free to add in if I forget anything. And I won't go too far into the weeds on this. The budget is very complicated, especially here in Colorado. But I just wanted to give kind of a flavor of what is going on, because I'm sure you all have heard a lot about the deficit in the budget for the state this year. So HR 1, Trump calls it the big, beautiful bill. I can't do that. So we're calling it HR 1. And it had kind of two sides to it. One is the tax cuts, and the other is the spending cuts in order to offset the revenue cuts. So it permanently extended the 2017 tax cuts that were, passed under Trump's first administration, but it also introduced new deductions for individuals and corporations, many for corporations, mainly benefiting, our richer upper and middle class income households, and then of course corporations. And on the spending side, of course, as we've been seeing in the news, there were deep cuts to our federal safety programs, Medicaid and SNAP, introducing new work and eligibility requirements and shifting that cost to the state. We have seen that people's healthcare premiums are skyrocketing. In Colorado, we'll talk about this in a minute, but Colorado helped offset some of the cuts to the healthcare to kind of ease the burden of how much people would be paying if they're on the state exchange. And so our folks saw like 100% increases in their exchange rates, but some places in the country are seeing 300% or 500% increases. And those are happening I believe at the end of this year. So, so all bad news. In addition, just one thing, Colorado ties our taxes to the federal taxes. We're one of two states that does that. So when there's cuts at the federal level, there's automatic cuts at the state level. And so we lost a good amount of revenue very quickly as that bill passed. And so that's, I'm not sure why that happened. Not really sure why we do that, but I think it happened under, administrations like 20 years ago. So just one note on tax incentives here in Colorado, we had to reduce climate tax credits. So the federal tax credits are gone as of I think the September 30th for like EVs, or and then there's more tax credits that are ending at the end of this year for like heat pumps and solar panels and things like that. But the state also had to reduce our tax credits to help offset the cost. So this is what that is. There was a special session over the summer to deal with the cuts, and they were able to close some corporate tax loopholes and save the state $245 million. And then the governor's office was given the latitude to cut the remaining deficit. And so he used various cuts and reserve funds to do that. But this session, they still have to cut an additional $850 million due to Medicaid cost increases and Tabor. Tabor has this very complicated, that's the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And we have a very complicated formula where we take the, inflation and population and figure out like how much the state is allowed to spend. And anything that goes over that cap in terms of revenue that the state brings in has to be refunded to folks in the form of Tabor checks. It's a very popular component of our Constitution, but it is a very damaging component to our state. Because we aren't able to fund things and we can't when we need to, and we can't like plan ahead well because inflation and population are changing, and sometimes we have good years and sometimes we have very bad years. And right now we are in like a double, sort of double whammy. That's right, Lydia. We have the revenue, but we can't use it. We're a wealthy state in a lot of ways, but we have no flexibility to spend the money that we're bringing in. Okay. Oopsies. What did I do? Oh dear. Hold on. Okay. Don't panic. I was just hitting the wrong buttons. Okay. All right. So let's move into our priority bills. So the first one is because so any bill that has a fiscal note, which means that it might cost money from the general funds, is a non-starter this year. We have no money, of course, so any bill that's going to cost the state anything can't pass, and we're going to be cutting back things. So we're trying to look for creative ways to continue to help people transition their homes to clean energy, to clean energy upgrades, to put solar panels on the roof, to transition to a heat pump, to do any number of things. And so one of the bills that was introduced last year and unfortunately died at the very end of session was a bill that would allow people to basically borrow money from the state to buy some of these things, maybe solar panels or heat pumps or other things that would help them transition off of gas, be more energy efficient, save money on their utilities. They would be able to borrow money at a low interest rate and then pay that off on their utility bill. So it's on-bill financing. This bill unfortunately died at the very end, and there was some negotiations happening around kind of where that money was going to come from. And right now this bill is being rewritten a bit. One of the things that I think we're trying to do this year is to make that the interest rate low to zero, either like 0.5% or 0%, to allow low income families or lower income families to be able to access those funds. And so that is one of the things that we're trying to figure out. Lydia, did you have a question?
Yeah, my husband works in this space, and so I know there's a lot of there's programs for low-income families to access these things at no cost to them. And so I'm wondering if the bill could somehow integrate education to low-income families about those opportunities first before they're pushed into the financing. option. So just like wanted to see if there's a way that it can be targeted toward the right income brackets.
Yeah, that's a great question and suggestion. And I think some of that is going to be determined. What I understand how the bill will be set up is that it's going to kind of give the sort of basic parameters of giving Xcel and other investor-owned utilities the option to do this, or the requirement to do this, I'm not sure. And then it will go to the Public Utilities Commission for a, to basically decide exactly how the program will be set up under each utility. And that then we can advocate for things like, mandatory, like making, education, public education, making sure that people understand how the program works, making sure they don't over borrow so that like their utility bill will still be affordable for them, because not every upgrade is going to mean a lower utility bill for them. And, obviously you don't want to borrow too much, even if you have a 0% interest rate. So just like making sure that that there's like lots of consumer education, so that people understand kind of what they're getting into. Okay, were there more questions about that? Just jump in if you have one.
Lydia, I'd love to hear more about what you're saying there.
Yeah, I can be brief. I don't want to take too much from the policy piece, but there's a program called CARE. I can't remember the acronym. And so it's basically administered um, through different nonprofit programs and the Energy Outreach Colorado. And so they are able to um, support low-income families with energy efficiency upgrades. So they get like a home energy audit, and then they identify different upgrades that would increase comfort and safety of the home as well as reduce energy bills. And then based on like what different tax credits are applicable, like it's those tax credits also help pay for the upgrades, and then also the utilities help fund it. Energy Outreach Colorado helps fund it, and then some like local municipalities have funds toward it as well. So it's a great program, and it can like cover huge costs for families like insulation or heat pump furnaces and water heaters and that kind of thing. So it's pretty cool.
This is amazing. I didn't know about it, Lydia, and it seems like that any bill that offers or any program that offers reduced cost or reduced cost financing needs to also, when they describe that, they need to also describe these other options. And that needs to be included in any information about the financing programs. There's also programming, I believe it's been adopted at the state level for a limited number of homes where people have respiratory conditions or other health conditions, and they're pretty amazing programs, although limited. There's one for Denver, and I believe there might be one at the state level. So if you have respiratory conditions and you meet the income requirements, you can have your air quality assessed. You can have appliances installed at no cost to address your indoor air quality, i.e. heat pumps instead of your gas furnace, etc. So even though those programs are small, people do need to know about those. Yeah. Zero zero cost options in addition to the financing options. So good call. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to include that in that link in our notes in the follow-up email. Thank you, Lydia. That's great. Any other questions on this bill or comments? Great. Okay. This next one we also worked on last year, wanted to work on this year. Last year, it actually never got introduced. But the 2026 Clean Electricity Planning Bill basically requires utilities to submit clean energy plans for how they'll reduce emissions to 100% renewable and reliable electricity by 2040. This is a priority for the governor. It was last year as well. And there was a lot of time spent last year kind of behind the scenes negotiating, and received a huge amount of pushback from the utilities who just do not want to comply with this. We have state mandated goals for reducing our emissions in Colorado. And the utilities, of course, have a major role to play there. We are working towards 100% reduction by 2050. But in order to meet those goals, we really need utilities to get there faster. And so this is on the electricity side for Xcel and the bigger utilities to meet this. And we don't have a lot of details on this bill. It's going to be very complex. But this is sort of the big goal. And we know we're going to get a lot of pushback from the utilities again this year. It's going to be a major campaign, but it's so critical for us to be reducing pollution, for us to be reducing emissions. So yeah, I see some comments coming through. Do we have any questions? Good question, Lydia. Lauren, do you happen to know that?
Yeah, a little bit. So the original goal was 2050 in the state's roadmap. So this would accelerate that transition to 2040. I was just on a meeting where people seem to indicate that this legislation is being reshaped in so that maybe it's not as rigid about 2040, or so we might see some other form of this legislation. It might not look exactly like this or be as simple as this, but it's inspired by this. And I even found a page on Polis's website from 2019 that mentions this specific goal, and I'll share that page. But I think, there's a lot of conversations about modifying it. Like you said, it could be more complex. It could be more nuanced. It might do more in some areas and less in other areas. So we're all kind of waiting and conversing about. It's not written in stone that it's going to be exactly this way, apparently. That's all I really know. I just barely know that.
Yeah, and I think the folks who are working on the policy are working with the Polis administration, the Colorado Energy Office, and and the utilities to figure out how we can come to probably, it's not going to be everything that we want, because the utilities are, they have a lot of power and influence over our legislature. And we have seen Xcel really backpedal on their commitments to renewable energy. They're proposing, new gas plants. They're trying to keep coal plants open, and really pushing back on this, particularly this year, under a new federal administration, but it was happening, even last year and the year before. So it's going to be a critical opportunity for us to be weighing in as moms and as ratepayers, to be talking with our legislators about why it's important to be hitting these goals. And even if we have, a less ambitious bill, it's still going to be quite difficult to pass it. But it's important, and it may be our last bite at this apple for a little while as the Polis administration enters its last legislative year. And we're not really sure what's going to happen after next year's election. Depends on who gets elected and what their priorities are. Okay, the last bill I wanted to talk about is data centers, which we started this call talking about a little bit. And I know like probably the most about this bill, but still a lot that's being discussed here. So just sort of stepping back, you know, last year a bill was introduced at the very end of session. I think there was 2 weeks left. We were facing, you know, a budget crisis, not knowing how bad it was going to get later in the year. But we were already dealing with cuts this last session, and a bill was introduced that basically had no safeguards around data center builds for water, for jobs, for, you know, clean energy use, and how that energy was going to be, you know, whether they were going to utilize gas plants or, and how it was going to impact ratepayers. And it had huge tax incentives. So at a time when we were in a budget crisis, this bill was going to give money to the richest companies on the planet to build data centers that are very damaging to communities and the environment in which they exist. And so there was a big discussion about, you know, how are we going to be proactive about this? How can we put some safeguards around data centers coming to Colorado? You know, we're the West, we don't have water to spare for data centers, which use a lot of water in their operations to cool the data centers so this bill is really aiming to do that. We are not trying to stop data centers from coming to Colorado. That's not something that we're able to do, even if we want to. But this bill will put some parameters and protections around, you know, the data centers that do come. So a few things here. For new large load customers, and that's generally speaking of like data centers, that they will pay the full share of the cost of new generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure. That 100% of their electricity will come from renewable or other zero carbon generation resources. That there needs to be transparency. That they will, you know, must report annually on their energy consumption and their renewable purchases or generation. We need to know about their power usage effectiveness, their water usage. On the utility side, I'm just going to run through these a little bit quickly, and then we can talk about them if there's questions. But on the utility side, that when a data center comes in, that you know, the utilities are also requiring that large load customers pay their full share of new power infrastructure, generation, transmission, and distribution. That there must be interconnection requirements and contracts with these data centers and other large load customers, and those contracts need to be public. That they shall not offer economic development rates to large load customers, and that adding data centers are not going to impact the utilities' ability to reach their greenhouse gas emission reduction targets that are required by law. And then on the government side, the local government side, that, you know, local governments are able to impose their own regulations on new large load customers, that they can require setbacks, noise pollution regulations, air pollution, water resource impact streams, things like that, that our local governments have some control over the impacts that these data centers have coming into their communities. I saw some things going into the chat. Any questions or comments? Feel free to come off mute. Oh, hi, Martin. Go ahead, Jean. Jean, did you have something?
No, not at all.
Okay, sorry, I saw that. Lauren, go ahead.
Do you have a draft of this bill? I haven't seen it yet, so thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is great. Thank you for all this information. I'd like to see whatever, you know, these details are new to me, and I think we all need to have them. So Thank you very much for providing it. And I just wanted to raise a flag that when we talk about zero carbon other than renewable, we're talking about generally uranium-based nuclear reactors. And that means the uranium has to be extracted, transported. These reactors have to operate safely in an environment where the regulatory agency is being defunded at the federal level and there's nuclear waste being produced by them. And the radioactive, the potential for radioactive releases is especially serious for maternal health and newborn's health. So, as well as all of us to be exposed to potential increased cancer risk. So we just, don't need this. And I don't, even if the data centers are providing their own electricity, their own power generation, they need to do it without nuclear power. And I think that should be a state level policy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of movement to make nuclear power more acceptable. But all those facts that I just rattled off, that's just the beginning of the problems with it. We just because they might own their own reactors doesn't mean those reactors will be safe. They'll be less regulated than otherwise. So we really do need renewable sources and not zero carbon sources. So I'm just putting it out there. That's our opinion at PSR Colorado. And I encourage everybody to consider and watch out for whenever it's zero carbon or clean rather than renewable. That terminology is fraught with the threat of the hazards that come with nuclear power.
Lauren, that was my question about the second bill. Is that like 100% clean, reliable? Does that include nuclear or no?
It does if they say clean instead of renewable. And
Gotcha.
I just looked back at the 2019 policy on the Polis administration's page, and they say renewable. And often it's renewable that you see in media reports. However, the language of the bill is what it's the devil in the details. It's the specific language. If it says clean, we passed a bill, HB 1040, yes, last year, and now nuclear power qualifies as clean energy in Colorado.
I couldn't remember if that had actually gone through or not. Yeah,
It's
that is really
unfortunately,
horrifying.
yeah, it is. It's really one of the hardest things that I've had to witness in my time as an activist, unfortunately.
On that note, I had a conversation, I forgot with whom, who was pretty linked up with the legislature, and they said not to sweat that new declaration that declares it clean. It was basically a nod to the pipe fitters union, and at least some of the legislators do know full well that the whole SMR, small nuclear reactor stuff, is pie in the sky. They don't exist yet. They won't exist for 10 years. So basically just giving it a friendly nod, hoping or knowing full well that it's not going to come to pass. But
They
that's just what I heard.
Yeah, well, there's a constant drumbeat from the establishment, for lack of a better word, not to worry our pretty little heads about nuclear power. And I don't buy it because it grows and grows and grows in legitimacy every time it's legitimized. And that's exactly what this bill did, is legitimize it. So we can't take it for granted that it's not going to be further legitimized and actually implemented. Meanwhile, resources and conversations are diverted from the real solutions that we need. But I do
Very good points. Very good points. I still believe that it will run up against economic realities that make it totally not feasible. But yeah, very good points.
Well, thank you. We can hope and believe, but we also have to tie up our camel, as they say.
Yeah, thank you both for those comments. Yeah, Mountain Mamas was opposed to that bill that Lauren mentioned. We don't support nuclear, but this is, and so I think, like, to your question or comment, Lauren, about like whether and Lydia about like whether nuclear could be included in either of these bills. I think, you know, I think we just don't really know. There's discussion about, yeah, I'm hearing the same things Lauren is hearing. Like, don't worry, it's too expensive. But it's so far out. But I every time I turn around, I hear a converted person about, oh, I just got this really great presentation from the nuclear industry, and you know, I'm not so sure it's a terrible thing. So I do think we need to be we need to be vigilant about it, and mindful, and continuing to kind of beat back that drumbeat. So,
may I ask a question? Reading about the SMRs last year, did I read that they are in fact in use in China for sure, and maybe Russia?
That's right.
Where, you know, we absolutely cannot count on any data that we get from them as to safety or efficacy is reliable or factual or like that.
Right. That's right. And here they failed to deliver, you know, they actually had orders for SMRs, and the company NuScale delayed to the point and had cost overruns to the point where the orders did not go through. They were not completed. And that's it. That's all we have.
So just one more note on the data center bill. Like, you know, this is sort of like early components of the bill. As I mentioned, all of these things are still being drafted, and I also want to mention that there is a competing data center bill out there right now that would provide tax incentives, and so we have lots of conversations, not from Mountain Mama's perspective, but lots of conversations with some of our coalition partners, talking to, you know, data center builders and Google and, you know, the interested parties and the legislators on this, on the other side, to see, you know, is this going to become one bill? Is it going to be two competing bills? How can we come together on something that provides protections? You know, we are vehemently opposed to any tax incentives. I can't even believe that that's part of the conversation. But hopefully that will not come to fruition. So we'll keep you posted on how, you know, all of this, you know, goes through. I think most of these look really good to me, and I'm excited that we're having this conversation, and hopeful. The legislators I've been talking to feel this is important. You know, they think that we need to provide some safeguards, especially around ratepayers and water use. So, so more to come. I know this is going to be a really popular issue, and we're, you know, I'm glad that we're having it. All right, we're at 12:45. All right, let's wrap this baby up. Couple of quick announcements. You know, as I mentioned, we have a legislative team in Colorado, where folks can plug in a little bit more in depth with these conversations. If you are interested in learning more about that team, please send me an email. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. We just had our first meeting last week, so really early conversations, and we'll be having more in-depth conversations about like the bills that we're supporting, and kind of thinking about other bills that we want to bring into our priority list. I also want to mention that at the Public Utilities Commission, there is a gas infrastructure plan consideration. Xcel has proposed sort of their next 5-year plan for gas infrastructure. This is on the, you know, natural gas side of our utilities, and we have, and they're proposing almost $3 billion of new gas in the state. So we are pushing back on that. If you're interested in learning more, Meg and I and Desi will be testifying next week on that. So if you have time and interest, please let me know. And then our next meeting is December 12th at noon. And I'm not sure exactly what we'll be talking about quite yet, but we'll make that announcement. So I'm seeing a lot of chatter in the chat. Anything folks want to come off mute and mention or ask questions about? Go ahead, Lauren.
Just thought I'd raise that, the Public Utilities Commission's, sunset bill, that means they will have a new mandate with new provisions for the scope of their work, the power of enforcement, et cetera. So that PUC sunset bill is going to be a very important bill as well.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I think we're going to be taking a look at that too. We just don't have a lot of info yet. Anything else? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. Sorry we went a few minutes over. Let me know if you have questions about Ledge Team or anything else. Happy to chat more. And yeah, we'll send out a recording of this afterwards so you can have the information, and we'll talk next month.